Happy to meet you in Business Doctor once again. Today we are going to discuss about some interesting things about processes. Every organization has got some kind of process for its own benefit, but we are not going to discuss which process is good for an organization and what is the comparison between process A and process B. We are not getting into that. On the other hand, we are going to discuss about the understanding or concept behind or an abstract understanding of how these processes work. Why processes in the first place? It is because an organization is going to produce something by result of working on something. It might be a service or it might be a product, which means that the outcome, which is the quality of the work or the product or the service, that needs to be a topmost priority. Then how fast that work can be done or accomplished or the service could be rendered. So the speed at which an organization is able to produce that quality and how often it is able to reproduce or repeat that work in the fastest manner possible with the best quality of work to be delivered to the customers. Why I'm talking about customers is that the business has got a sense to customer. That's why I'm tying it back to customer in this context. There are 5 basic things which you should remember when it comes to processes. Whatever is the work you may be doing in a manufacturing or a healthcare or retail or banking or insurance or any of those verticals you will be associated with, you will be producing a content for your customer in the form of a product or service. So that is one. The second one is an administration. It might be HR, sales, marketing, finance, facilities, works engineering or documentation. In case of vehicles, it's like a service, repair, maintenance. So there is a production, there is a vendor or supplier, there is equipment. Sometimes it could be even an administration on the ambience, like air, temperature, etc., quality assurance. So there are so many administrative processes or departments in place. Third, the resources. It could be human or non-human. Non-human means it is like equipments, machines. So any of those resources are human resources. The other 2 resources are finance and time. We'll discuss about time separately down the line later. So finance and time is very, very important resource. The fourth one, the very basic purpose of the business, which is customers. When we talk about customers in the process sense, it is like fulfilling the demand of the market or a specific requirement of a customer. So how much is required or what is the quantum of deliverable? Say for example, you are producing a vehicle, so you are going to produce say 1,000 vehicles a month. So that's a quantum, like 1,000 per month. Or it could be you may be manufacturing mobile phones, or it could be a mobile signal in terms of usage, number of subscriptions, or it could be number of banking transactions. It could be any of those things. So the from the customer's perspective, the quantum of demand, fulfillment. Once you know that what is the quantum and how, when I say quantum, it means what quantity at what point in time. The frequency and the quantity both have to be determined. Once you are able to determine that, some methodologies like waterfall or agile or the way you organize your manufacturing or layouts or equipment layouts, the processing model or a linear model or a hub and spoke model, and the entire motion study, everything gets based on your demand fulfillment. Suppose you have 1 year to fulfill, like you are sending rockets to moon or space. That is not going to be like 100 per day kind of a production. It's just a one-off, maybe once in 3 months, once in 6 months, once in a year kind of a thing. Whereas the mobile data usage is to be monitored, or the spectrum usage has to be monitored for every second or every millisecond. So it varies on so many parameters. Based on that, the methodology differs. So that completes the fourth part. The fifth part, which is the essence of this fundamental abstract behind the processes. The traceability of all these things, what you are producing, what all the administrations which you are using for to produce, what all the resources who are going to participate in the produce, and how it is linked to your customers' needs or the demands in terms of content and time. How all these four are getting traced back to every one of it. Every step in the produce, every step in the administration, every step in the resource, every marketing or sales demands in terms of customers. So that traceability, like which vehicle is running at which customer's place, which means that the vehicle engine number, chassis number, there are so many things which you are tracing, right? The same way for that's basically a process. So in that sense, everything what we discuss has to be traced. And not only this, to give the customer the confidence, the process, all these 5 steps that need to give him the kind of comfort, which is like, okay, don't worry, our company is safe, our processes are safe, the products which you are using is safe. So the safety measures as regards to reliability of the product or service offered, besides these 4 or 5 parts which we discussed. So that is the confidence the processes has to give to the customers. Well, we are talking about that in terms of doing and tracing, the demand of the product or service is again based on time and cost. Cost is the amount that is getting into the resource and administration and all the efforts behind that produce. The various interlink between these activities, the offerings, the resources, the administrative functions, even with the traceability, one thing which is going to tie it up is the factor of time. So when you are swiping into your office, for example, at 9:30, are you producing something, or 9:29 you are producing something, or 9:31 you are producing something. So to that extent, the time or the chronology of events have to be monitored in the process. So it effectively boils down to, for every stage in the whole definition of the process in an organization, you call as an activity. For example, I am doing a purchase order. So purchase order is an activity. So there's a business activity rather. Okay, so for that business activity, so let's say that activity is, some people may call it as an entity. What are the attributes that go into that particular activity? It could be admin, or it could be any resources, or it could be another activity per se, which has got a dependency on this. And the chronology. So if these three are taken care essentially, then all your processes can be simply monitored. One point which is still missing is how do you know that you are in the right direction or at the right speed or at the right velocity going towards achievement of the process expectations? So you have to look back, right? It is nothing but a fallback option, or sorry, it's a feedback option. So to get feedback means that it's a closed loop system. So in the closed loop system, whatever you do automatically gets a feedback and use it for improvement of your input or the previous activity, so that when you are doing it again, we discussed about repeatability, when you are doing it again, you don't make the same mistake. So one way of measuring the feedback or giving a instruction how to improve upon comes from the metrics. It could be on people, it could be on non-human things, or it could be on any of those 5 parameters we discussed about. The other feedback could be on equipments, gadgets, tools, utilities. So that will help you to set the house in order in terms of, say, for example, manufacturing, or even if you have all of us will be having a electricity meter at home. So how will you improve certain things? Only when we measure. So the meter has to perfectly work in the way it is supposed to work. So taking a reading at a different point in time in a year gives you a kind of feedback, and whatever you want to improve upon based on that meter readings, whether you want to use more or you want to use less, that decision you can always take. There are processes around the product like ISO standards. There are processes towards the product. There are processes at the activity level like CMM. There are multiple levels, level 1, level 2, CMMI is also there, and Prince 2 kind of a mechanism. All those things are there. So it essentially boils down to these 5 parameters and giving the confidence to these customers, your customers rather. So how do you implement this concept? It's pretty simple in the sense you may have to define the policies, rules, the procedures. It could be operating procedure. Like for example, when you enter home, normally people tend to remove their shoes outside. It's just a procedure. Sometimes you may have to give a checklist, like how you see in the cleanliness as regards to a hotel or in a toilet, where there will be a checkbox like this is clean, that is cleaned, etc. So there is a checklist. There are forms and templates which people can use, just blindly follow that. Or it could be lot of tools, digital as well as manual tools are available, electronic tools are available, and for all these things there it should leave a record or for maintenance, for later use, for feedback. Once we have these things in place, automatically what happens is that it leads to continuous improvements. So today I was like this, tomorrow I am going to improve upon, because this is what the expectations are, so I am going to improve upon. So in a sense, in a nutshell, if you look at, if you want to have a control on something, first that needs to be measured. Anything that cannot be measured cannot be controlled. That's very simple. Anything which customer receives is the direct value you are adding to the customer. Anything which is not seen or felt or used by the customer, it's all indirect or overhead, or it could be administrative overhead, resource overhead, it could be any of those overheads. And the companies, how they look at is that it's a burden, and they would always try to minimize that burden or reduce the burden. Obviously, that will lead to automation, innovations, artificial intelligence, and so on and so forth. We will discuss about the processes in detail for every function later in the series. Hope you can understand why process is there in the first place at an abstract level, and if you apply these 5 along with the safety plus the feedback mechanism and some of the implementation techniques we discussed about, that will give you a kind of confidence that people don't need to worry about process, because there are a lot of people who are worried about the process per se. That worry, I hope, by understanding the underlying principles behind these concepts of processes, you will be much more confident to take upon your work. Thank you for listening. Have a nice day. See you in the next video. Cheers.